To no surprise, Ichiro is officially in the Hall of Fame, and Felix Hernandez took an encouraging first step towards Cooperstown as well. We'll talk about that, as well as a few other Mariners news and notes coming up here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. Colby, hit it.
You are Locked On Mariners, your daily Seattle Mariners podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Ahoy, sailors. It is Wednesday, January 22nd, 2025. This is Ty Gonzalez and Colby Patnode for the Locked On Mariners podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Talking Hall of Fame today. Ichiro is officially in, and Felix took a nice first step as well. We'll go over the results for both of those guys. Plus, Daniel Kramer of MLB.com posted some interesting notes about the Mariners offseason yesterday that we want to go over, and the Mariners were also featured prominently in Baseball America's top 100 prospects this morning. Before we get into all that, quick shout out to our title sponsor today, Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the promo code Locked On MLB. That's LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. And if you want to hear from me and Colby even more and help support the show, check out our Patreon. All you have to do to check that out is click the link in the description of this episode. So we haven't really talked about the Hall of Fame on this show. Talked about it a little bit on the Patreon, but not really here. Because obviously it was a foregone conclusion. Ichiro was going to get into the Hall of Fame. And sure enough, he did officially yesterday. He gets 393 of the 394 possible votes. The one person that didn't vote for him, as far as I'm concerned, is an attention-hungry loser who should have their voting rights revoked.
At least they have the courage to put their name on it, though.
Totally, right? Yeah, so... Yeah. Whatever, right? Don't want that to detract from how cool of an accomplishment this is for Ichiro. He ends up getting the second highest percentage of votes, or tied for the second highest percentage of votes, tallied by a Hall of Fame inductee, tying Derek Jeter. Mariano Rivera, of course, is the only unanimous Hall of Fame inductee, which is a whole nother conversation, but whatever.
By the way,
moving on.
Ichiro owned Mariano Rivera.
That's correct. So yeah, really cool for Ichiro. We'll talk about Felix here in a moment. Felix ends up getting 20.6% of the vote, which is a really, really encouraging first step for him. We'll talk more about that later on. But Ichiro officially has his press conference yesterday. It was a really cool moment. And starts making the rounds. You got to see him on MLB Network, all that stuff. The Mariners officially announced that they are going to retire his jersey on August 9th. They're going to be doing a commemorative plaque giveaway. They're going to do a jersey giveaway. They're going to do a Funko Pop giveaway the series before his jersey retirement. So a lot of fun stuff planned for the month of August to honor Ichiro. So Colby, your reaction to Ichiro officially being inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame?
Yeah, it's very cool. Obviously, we knew it was going to happen. We didn't spend much time talking about it because it's inevitable, right? And so the only real question was he going to get in unanimously? Almost, not quite. But at the end of the day, is it really like that big of a deal? No, we don't want it to overshadow the accomplishment that was Ichiro. 3,000 hits, and he wasn't a rookie until 2000, or until he was 27 years old in 2001. I think prior to that, the oldest debut a player had and still collected 3,000 hits was Wade Boggs, and I think he was 23. So Ichiro, just a unique player, particularly for the era that he played in. The era of the home run and the tail end of the steroid era and all of that. And he was, the slap hitter who stole a ton of bags and played great defense and all that stuff. So it was very unique to the era, certainly, and very much a throwback. And yet he was arguably the most popular player on the planet for 5-6 years there. So yeah, it's a unique player. It's a unique person, and obviously we know how much baseball means to Ichiro and how much the Seattle Mariners mean to Ichiro and how much Ichiro means to Seattle Mariner fans. So it's very cool to have a day to celebrate, and then we're gonna all get together in August and thank him one last time. The jersey's going to go up. It'll be right there next to Edgar and Griffey, and obviously Jackie. And it'll be cool. It'll be emotional. Ichiro got emotional yesterday. It's one of those things where it's just cool because, we tend to think of athletes as like sometimes they're drones essentially, and they're fighting for our entertainment essentially, but they're humans, and this means a lot to him. You saw Billy Wagner's reaction yesterday as well, how much it means to these players to be honored like this. So it's still a big deal ultimately. I think the Hall of Fame is kind of becoming a little bit of a joke of itself, not because of the people they're letting in, but because of the people they're keeping out. And how full of themselves a lot of these writers are, thinking that they are the judge, jury, and executioner of baseball history. I think that is staying the Hall of Fame a little bit, but it's still, a huge honor. Ichiro's going to go in as a Mariner. I think somebody wasted column inches being like, we're pretty sure Ichiro's going in as a Mariner. No kidding. He's going
Watch him go in as a Marlin.
Yeah. Like, come on. What are we doing? So yeah, it's cool. It's exciting. It's fun, but there was no real build up to it because we all knew it's kind of like more like the Griffey induction where we're like, okay, well, how high is the number going to go? As opposed to like the Edgar Martinez one where that was us, fighting as a community for years to get him in. So not quite as sweet as that, but at the end of the day, Ichiro's a Hall of Famer. We all knew he was going to be. And, first Japanese born player to ever be inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame. He got a higher percentage of votes. This is one of my favorite things that came with this. He got a higher percentage of votes for the Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown than he did for the Japanese Baseball Hall of Fame in Japan.
It's crazy.
So,
it's crazy.
I don't know what that's about, but it's really cool. I mean, there's no question about it, and it's well deserved. And Ichiro he's a Mariner, like through and through, and he chose to he still chooses to interact and be involved with the Mariners, and so I think that says a lot about him and what the city means to him and what he means to the city.
Yeah, Ichiro, for me growing up, I was 5 years old when Ichiro made his major league debut. He was kind of that like superhero figure in sports for me, like, Michael Jordan was for a lot of kids growing up. So to see him now, all these years have passed, to see him in the Hall of Fame. I mean, you talked about it just a moment ago, like how much Ichiro still loves the game, how much you can't keep him away from the game, how he'll be throwing on the backfields in Peoria, how he'll be, doling out BP, on a random Wednesday afternoon at T-Mobile Park.
Shaq's fly balls, plays against high school girls,
sure.
And all that stuff. Like Ichiro's a baseball, like he's a
Ichiro is baseball.
Yeah.
And the Hall of Fame, for all the issues that you and I both have with it, the Hall of Fame is about telling the story of this great sport. And you can't tell the story of baseball without Ichiro Suzuki. And now he has his rightful place in the Hall. So yeah, congratulations to Ichiro Suzuki on officially being inducted into the Hall of Fame. He's been a Hall of Famer for years and years and years, but we can officially say it now. And hopefully one day we can say that about Felix Hernandez as well. We'll be talking about him and how he did on his first turn on the ballot in just a moment. But first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by SelectQuote. The World Series, the Super Bowl, the Olympics. The world's top athletes get to play in these top-level sporting events thanks to one thing: teamwork. And teamwork can also protect your financial legacy and your family's future. SelectQuote's licensed insurance agents are the perfect teammates when shopping for customized, affordable life insurance. They can find you the right policy to keep your financial legacy safely in your family's end zone. SelectQuote is one of America's leading insurance brokers with nearly 40 years of experience, helping over 2 million customers find over $700 billion in coverage since 1985. Other life insurance brokers offer impersonal, one-size-fits-all policies that may cost you more and cover you less, while SelectQuote's licensed insurance agents work for you to tailor a life insurance policy for your individual needs in as little as 15 minutes. SelectQuote. They shop, you save. Get the right life insurance for you for less at selectquote.com/lockedon. Go to selectquote.com/LOCKEDON today to get started. That's selectquote.com/lockedon. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. So again, it was a foregone conclusion that Ichiro was going to get in. Where my attention lied for this process with the Hall of Fame voting this time around was really on Felix Hernandez and where he was going to wind up. Now, look, we all know how great Felix was and how high his peak was, but how that conversation was going to be handled on a national scale was kind of up in the air. But so far, so good. Got 20.6% of the vote. He only needed 5 to stay on the ballot. This is a really cool first step for Felix. I would say this is very, very encouraging for Felix. And, you know, we know how well the Mariners can campaign for their guys. They did it with Edgar. They obviously have the book on this now on how to educate the voters on their guys. And now that Ichiro's in, it's going to be a full court press for Felix for however many years it's going to take to get him into the Hall of Fame. So, Colby, your thoughts on what Felix accomplished this first turn through the ballot? And do you think now at this point, does he have a real shot at making his way into Cooperstown?
Yeah, it'll be interesting. 20% is a good number in year one for a player like Felix. What's pretty interesting here is that the first year number seems to matter less and less. Andrew Jones had a very low first year number. He's going to be inducted next year. Billy Wagner, I think, was in the single digits his first year. I think he got like 8% his first year on the ballot, and he got in 10 years later. And Edgar, I think, was initially at about 35%, but he dipped as low as I think 22% in year 5. And he was able to make that climb in 5 years with an aggressive campaign. So, yeah, Felix is a very interesting case. He has the potential to. I mean, keep in mind, Felix won the Cy Young Award with a 13-12 record, and that was considered to be like a huge win for the analytics community and all that stuff. And spoke to like the growing power, or whatever you want to call it, of that community in the voting block, essentially. He kind of has the chance to do that again with the Hall of Fame, where we might see a shift in like, hey, while we still can't acknowledge like the guys who are accumulators, like the Tom Glavines or the Craig Biggios, who put up the 300 wins, the 3,000 hits, and that's because they're consistently good for 15 years instead of like elite for 5 to 10 years. But guys like Johan Santana didn't even get a second shot on the ballot, and Santana was incredible. He had a similar run to Felix, for 6 or 7 years, and he didn't even get a second shot. So the fact that Felix got 20%, pretty interesting. Again, when a guy like Johan Santana didn't get that shot. I think that these next 2 or 3 years is pretty important. The number of new players who are going to be on the ballot over the next couple of years who are absolutely, first ballot Hall of Famers, I don't know if there are any. Next year, the best player on the ballot is Cole Hamels. And Hamels, to me, is kind of he's an accumulator, right? Like Felix Hernandez is a better pitcher than Cole Hamels was at their best, but Hamels did it for a little bit longer. So how do you value that? So yeah, I do think the next couple of years, there's going to be a lot of log jams that are removed from the ballot. Either they're getting in, and I think there are a lot of, one and done candidates here on the next couple of ballots as well. So there's really no excuse to not have Felix as one of your top 10 votes if that's how you want to do it. So I do think the next couple of years are pretty critical. But yeah, I think he's got a shot. It's probably going to be a year 8, 9, 10 thing. I don't think he's going to have this huge leap and be in anytime soon. But yeah, he has a shot. The 20% is interesting. And there was quite a bit of conversation about him on a national level. People kind of explaining why they voted for him this time, why they didn't, why they plan to vote for him in the future and all that. So certainly there's a lot of interest. Felix has a very unique case to make. And, we might be seeing kind of this shift, and we've seen it over the last couple of years, of the old guard of the Hall of Fame voters kind of leaving, and this new wave of younger, more, less establishment type of voters coming in and being like, no, look at this, look at this, look at this, and embracing the new way to evaluate players. So I think this is a really good first step for him. I think he's got a shot to get in, but it's still going to be an uphill climb, and it's going to be kind of a campaign, more or less, and you're going to have to push for it and all that. And the Mariners have done it once with kind of another interesting test case for the Hall of Fame. Can they do it again? I think they can, but I think we got to bring the same energy, because it wasn't just the Mariners stumping for Felix or for Edgar that got him in. It was the fan base as a whole kind of pushing the idea and pushing the numbers out there and really, fighting for this, that turned a lot of people into yes votes for Edgar eventually.
Yeah, obviously the biggest concern for Felix's hopes of making it to the Hall of Fame were those last few years of his career and how much that was going to weigh on the voters' decisions. So far, it doesn't seem like it has much. We'll see, how that goes as we get into year 2, year 3, year 4, et cetera, of him being on the ballot. But it seems like quite a few voters are valuing peak over accumulation, which, as I've talked about, that's going to be a big topic of conversation with some of these other pitchers that are going to hit the ballot in the next, 5-10 years. All right. So Felix is really interesting, not just, for Felix's sake, but for some of these other pitchers that are going to be on the ballot soon as well. So, it's going to be a fascinating thing to keep track of. To me, Felix Hernandez is a surefire Hall of Famer. He should absolutely be in. And hopefully the Mariners are able to, educate the voters enough to make that happen. So, we'll see how it goes, but that's something that we're certainly going to be keeping track of here on the show over the next few years. All right. So that's all the Hall of Fame talk for the show. Let's get back into the current Mariners. We're going to talk a little bit about what Daniel Kramer had to write about yesterday on MLB.com, and also all the prospects that landed on Baseball America's top 100 list this morning in just a moment. But first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by Gametime. So I used to live in New Mexico, and down in New Mexico, there are 0 pro sports teams, and a lot of bands and artists that I listen to skip going there more often than not. So when I moved to Toronto, where there's a baseball team, a basketball team, a hockey team, even a soccer team, and there's great music being played every night in the city, I was right in my element. When I want to catch a ball game, or my wife and I want to see a band, I always get my tickets through Gametime. And that was the case well before Gametime sponsored our network and before I even joined the network, because it is truly the best ticketing service out there, hands down. I truly believe that. And now it's getting even better thanks to Gametime Picks. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. I can just go on the app, it'll show me the best deal right away, it'll show me the exact view I'll have, and most importantly, it'll tell me exactly what I'm going to pay with Gametime's all-in pricing, so there are no annoying little fees that pop up at the last second. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB, that's LOCKEDONMLB, for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. Daniel Kramer of MLB.com wrote an article yesterday detailing the latest on the Mariners offseason, which isn't a whole lot. Surprise, surprise. But the Mariners apparently are waiting on Alex Bregman to sign somewhere so they can acquire a third baseman that's not named Alex Bregman. Also, they apparently aggressively pushed for, at the time, Rangers first baseman Nathaniel Lowe, now Nationals first baseman Nathaniel Lowe. That's kind of interesting. What do you think about that? Because that's another first baseman the Mariners have now been linked to. They've basically been linked to every first baseman on the market except for Pete Alonso.
I mean, to be fair, they were never officially linked to Josh Naylor. But
true, it was the Yapper, which doesn't count.
So yeah, I mean, it's just funny.
And like John Heyman did say the Mariners were in on Pete Alonso, or they were one of the teams, but also John Heyman, he's in the Yapper category. He doesn't count.
So like, I mean, like either you count both of them or neither of them. But
yeah,
it is interesting that you look at some of the bigger bats that have been hard linked to the Mariners this winter. You're looking at Carlos Santana and Justin Turner and Paul Goldschmidt and Tristan Casas, now Nathaniel Lowe, and you kind of go, huh? And they added Solano, and you're just like, oh, what do all these guys have in common? Oh, they are all first base only type of guys. Interesting.
Well, apparently Donovan Solano is going to play some third, Colby,
but not second. Interesting.
But
so like I think that's just the reality of what they're looking at. Like they want to add like one kind of middle of the order-ish bat, and we could talk about whether or not Turner or Santana are middle of the order. They're not. But whatever. Where are you most likely to find that player? First base, obviously.
There are a lot of options there this offseason.
Right. And third base, there are none. Well, none that you're willing to pay for. So Low, not that surprised. It does sound like the Rangers just weren't going to trade him in division no matter what. File that name away for July, though, if things go south in Washington. But yeah, not that
good chance they will.
Yeah, not that surprised. That's a pretty good profile. He makes a lot of sense for the ballpark. Hit the style of hitter he is. I wouldn't be surprised if there are other first basemen out there that are being talked about. Really, the only players, infielders that have been like hard linked to the Mariners who aren't first basemen are Nico Horner, which was addressed in the same article about how real that was, and kind of Alec Bohm. And that's really been it. Like I can't think of anybody else.
Moncada.
Okay, Moncada. So there you go. Which, I mean, Moncada has his own issues.
That was also only a national report. I don't think we've heard from any of the local guys that they've been in on Moncada.
Right.
So,
but mostly just first baseman. That's really what seems to be where they're looking. And
which again, most of the options are there. But yeah, it's interesting considering that like if push comes to shove, you could feasibly plug first base with Luke Raley.
Right, but I think you'd like Raley to play left, right, first, DH, and push some of the other guys in the outfield to DH days. And obviously
but at second or third, you don't have a Luke Raley type of option.
No. And Luke Raley, by the way, also a platoon guy, right? So like you don't even want him to play first base every single day. And I guess that's where Solano comes in right now. So yeah, if you can go get an everyday first baseman, then you pretty much push Raley into, the fourth outfield platoon.
If only there was an everyday first baseman whose market has suddenly cratered and the team that he was just playing for apparently doesn't want to bring him back.
Anthony Rizzo.
Boom. You nailed it.
I was waiting for you to say he did play New York last year too.
Yeah. In pinstripes.
Yeah.
Still doesn't eliminate it.
Yeah, that's true. The pinstripes are ugly, by the way. But
yeah, I know you think that. Yeah.
No, I know that. That's a fact.
There
are no good jerseys that have pinstripes, except for the old school Orlando Magic.
Wrong.
The Orlando Magic back in the day. Those are good.
Orlando Magic. But also Phillies jerseys. I like the Phillies jerseys.
I like the baby blues. I don't like.
The baby blues are great.
I don't like the pink pinstripes. Like, no.
So that's about it from Kramer's article. He did say the Mariners expect to make a notable move before spring training, whatever that means.
Anthony Rizzo.
Hey, I guess we'll have something to talk about, Colby, before spring training. Yay.
I mean, to be fair, maybe he was talking about Will Klein.
Yeah. You got anything on Will Klein before we switch gears here, talk about prospects? I mean, technically Will Klein is a prospect.
He is. Yeah, I watched him in the Futures game. I went back and watched that. He threw 20 pitches.
By the way, for those that don't know, the Mariners acquired a right-handed pitcher named Will Klein from the Oakland Athletics yesterday for international slot bunny. He was acquired by Oakland from they're not Oakland anymore, from Kansas City in the Lucas Urseg deal at the deadline.
Yeah, he pitched in the Futures game in 2023 in Seattle. So I actually watched that outing. Through 20 pitches, I think 7 strikes. So the control command thing is a problem. But it's 96 to 98 touches 100. Pretty good curveball, I've been told. I didn't see it from what I watched, but nothing was near the zone, so it's kind of tough to judge. But a pretty good curveball. There's a slider. Now, on the broadcast, they called it a cutter. It's being classified as a slider, so we might have a James Paxton situation here. But that pitch apparently had a 54% whiff rate in the minors last year.
Can't escape that percentage.
Yes. That is like Matt Brash level of whiff rate on a pitch. So he's interesting. You got to teach him to throw strikes. It's kind of like Carlos Vargas a little bit, just better breaking ball, whereas Vargas is more just velocity. So, it's just an arm for the pile. He's interesting. He'll probably be in my top 30 somewhere. I mean, it's again, you're just see if we can teach him an ounce of control and watch the stuff play with 40 grade command and 45 control.
Yeah. The Mariners DFA'd Tyler J, who they claimed off of waivers from the Brewers, I think. Whatever. So, yeah. What was your favorite moment of the memory of the Tyler J era, Colby?
Probably me wasting $3 on his baseball card for my Jerry DiPoto acquisition binder.
Yikes. Hey, Baseball America dropped their top 100 prospects this morning, and the Mariners have the most prospects on that list with 7. That is headlined. We'll go through the names and you can tell us how you feel. The list is headlined by Colt Emerson at number 16. Then you have to go all the way down to number 56 for the next ranked Mariner. That's Cole Young. Johnny Farmello is the third highest ranked Mariner at number 70. Michael Arroyo at number 77, Felton Celestine at 89, Harry Ford at 95, and Lazaro Montes at 97. So not very high on Laz Montes like some other outlets.
No,
interesting.
I think he fell pretty significantly from where he was last year in those ranks. So they really bought into the struggles he had when he first made the leap from Modesto to Everett. So I imagine he'll go back up this year.
So the thing that really stands out to me here, and what's stood out to me quite a bit with some of the other rankings that we've seen come out over the last few weeks, Johnny Farmello ranked pretty high after a season in which he missed most of the action due to a torn ACL.
He's probably going to miss most of the action this year as well.
Yeah, that's quite a vote of confidence in a guy that, again, speed and athleticism is a big part of his game. You don't know how he's going to recover. Now, obviously, ACLs are not the death knell that they used to be in any sport, but still, you don't know how he's going to look post surgery when that is such a huge part of his game.
Youth is on his side.
Yeah,
I mean, but if you're going to tear your ACL, you'd rather do it at 20 than 30.
But clearly a lot of these outlets really, really like Johnny Farmello, despite the injury that he suffered. And then the other one, Harry Ford did make this list just barely. He's missed a couple of other lists around the circuit, though. Seems that some of these outlets are starting to fall out of love with Harry Ford. What do you think about that?
Yeah, not that surprised. It was It was an up and down year for Harry last year. The big question surrounding him right now is just where's the power? Is it ever going to come? I think he slugged like 360 last year. Like it was not great. Now the ballpark's not easy, right? And especially for right-handed hitters.
Yeah.
I'll grant you that. But you know what else isn't easy? Major league pitching. And so Harry right now is a guy who you're kind of in a weird spot with him because he is an incredible like walk machine. He's incredibly patient, but at the same time, is he too patient? Like, do you want him to be more aggressive? Well, what if he, is too aggressive and he doesn't take his walks and he's not that valuable of an offensive player? But as it is right now, is he going to walk 15, 16, 17% of the time at the major league level? No, probably not. Most, I think like like the guys who do that are Juan Soto. So yeah, you're kind of in a weird spot with Harry right now. And so he's tough to grade because on the one hand, he's still just 22 and he's in Double-A. He's not late or anything like that. And he's progressed nicely as a catcher defensively. And there are some, like he walks a lot and walks are valuable. He has a high on base skill. He makes contact at his age, which is, really good skill. But obviously he's a really good athlete and he steals bases. So he is a good prospect. I don't think he's top 100. I don't think he should be above Laz. I don't think he should be above Senja. So yeah, he's a really interesting case because, I don't necessarily would say that he's like stagnated because he's just moved up one level every year. He's been a pro. But the power just has not come at all. And if you're a fringe average catcher, which I think most people would say he is, I think he's fine back there. But most people, his defense is still questionable for some. And you're not going to hit for any power. Like you have to hit 250 and have a 350 on base to be an everyday big leaguer. If you're not going to hit for a shred of power, like look at JP Crawford last year, right? Played a premium position, good defender, didn't hit for any power, didn't hit for average, didn't get on base enough, and he just wasn't useful. So Ford is kind of, one of those players where it's like, you don't want to ding him too much for just naturally progressing as he is. Cause again, he's not behind schedule. Like that's not what's happening here, but the power is not there and there's still a question about where he plays and how much is he too patient at the plate? Is that going to play at the big leagues? Is he going to be able to take that many pitches and still be a productive, hitter? I don't know. And so I think there's some very legitimate questions there with Harry. I tend to think he'll figure something out. I think he'll get to at least average power, but he hasn't yet. And he's been on prospect list now for like 4 years. So there's also some fatigue that's setting in from the people who make these lists. So it all makes sense to me why he's falling off these lists and why he's going down. Pipeline has their list out. I think sometime next week we'll see if he's on that one.
249, 377, 367. That was the slash line in Double-A in 116 games this year. Yeah, that 367 slugging percentage sticks out like a sore thumb. It's going to be a big year for Harry. Really, in terms of just developing that power. There's this misconception in the fan base that like, oh yeah, he's knocking on the door. He's going to be, part of the major league roster at some point in 2025. I don't think there's any guarantee of that happening. He might, but that's going to require him having to prove some things. Down
Pretty sure he's going back to Double-A to start this year as well. I don't think he's going to make that jump to Triple-A with Cole Young.
Yeah, we'll see.
So yeah, he might again. Like I don't want to say he can't help you in 2025. I wouldn't count on it for a second. And
it's just not a slam dunk. It's not the slam dunk that I think a lot of fans think it is. At least that's kind of how I've gauged, like when we get questions in our mailbag or what have you about Harry.
Probably the least logical question we get in our mailbag segment is like, what do you do with Harry Ford? Because Cal Raleigh, do you trade Cal Raleigh because Harry Ford is ready do you trade Harry Ford?
Like Cal is blocking Harry. So where is Harry going to play?
We're not even close to worrying about that.
Well, that's a bridge we'll cross when we get to it, and we are not there. But I think a lot of fans assume that we're there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and we're not
at least a year away from that being a real conversation. At least.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see, you know, how the first few months of the season goes. But yeah, he's got quite a bit to prove down in the minors, and you know, we'll see where he starts the year. But starting the year in Arkansas again might do him some good. See how he retackles that
right.
level.
Also, might be one of the rare instances where and what he plays in spring training actually matters, and how he looks actually matters a little bit. Not the numbers, but just kind of the at bats that he's having, and the approach, and the game plan, and where he's playing on the field, and how often he's playing there on the field.
Who's he playing against?
Right, like those things. Harry Ford's probably one of those guys you want to watch for that, and that'll tell you a lot about where the Mariners think he's at, assuming he is still here, which we don't really have any reason to believe he's not going to be, but you never know.
Right. I mean, they could trade him, but again, the meta in the market right now isn't necessarily prospects for major leaguers. So who knows? You know, I think the Mariners would love to make a trade like that. Not saying that they would love to trade Harry Ford, but I'm sure they would love to trade just pure prospects for major leaguers. And obviously Harry Ford is someone that I'm sure a few teams still believe in quite a bit.
He's still a good prospect, whether he's in the top 100 or not. It's just, is he one of the elite prospects in the game?
Yeah. So we'll see. Again, going to be a big year for him. All right. That's going to do it for us. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. For Colby Patnode, I'm Titan Gonzalez. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at LO_Mariners. You can follow me at Titan Gonzalez and Colby at CPAT11. That's CPAT11. We're also on Blue Sky. You can follow me at TDG, Colby at MLB Colby, and the show at Locked On Mariners. Have yourself a beautiful baseball day, and we'll see you next time. Peace.